I was now a narcotics detective working on a drug team, and I got called out to do surveillance one night, and I went to the police department and removed what I believed to be cocaine from the evidence locker, and I used it, and at the time I didn't realize, but it was actually 99% pure fentanyl. And I had taken enough probably to kill a couple hundred people. And the last thing I remember of that night was waking up in the hospital. I was later told that I overdosed, near fatal overdose on the fentanyl. I crashed my detective vehicle, and this is where God really intervened into my life. At the time of this crash, I was an atheist. I didn't even believe in God. I would argue with Christians as to why God didn't exist. And at the time of my crash, an ambulance was in the intersection and stopped, loaded me up in the back, rushed me to the hospital that was 10 minutes away, and the doctor said if that ambulance hadn't have been there, I would have 100% died. Now, when I woke up in the hospital, I had my lieutenant and sergeant and all these doctors standing around me, and I knew that my life had just come crashing down. I knew that nothing was ever going to be the same. I always had a plan for this moment, and it was that I was going to commit suicide if this ever came out. And that was my plan. I planned as soon as I left the hospital to go home and to commit suicide. And I went home, and all I could think about was the shame and the guilt and the devastation that I had caused on my wife and my kids and the people that I had worked with. No one knew that I was struggling like this, and I knew inside that this was all going to come out, that my secrets of using drugs and struggling with PTSD was going to be a big deal. And a few days later, one of my really good friends with the Oregon State Police, he came to my house with his pastor, and the first thing he said to me was, "Thomas, I'm concerned that if you would have died, I'm concerned that you would have went to hell." And I remember just sitting there thinking about the reality of that. And then he told me that, "Thomas, I've come because I want to introduce you to God." And I remember telling him, I said, "Austin, God can't help me. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've made too many mistakes. God can't help me through this." And I remember him and his pastor just shared the gospel with me, and they said, "Thomas, God loves you. It doesn't matter what you've done. It doesn't matter the mistakes that you've made. God still loves you, and he has a plan for your life, and he has a purpose." And I remember sitting there and I'm like, okay, well, I don't believe that, Austin, but thank you for coming over. And he left. And the next day I remember I couldn't help but think that I needed to figure out who God was. I had this burning desire inside of me that I couldn't explain. And I became obsessed with trying to figure out who God was.